Inside the Magic, show number 379 for July 8th, 2020. This week's episode of Inside the Magic is brought to you by Magical Travel. Adventures by Disney Vacations are amazing, carefree family experiences with memories that will last a lifetime. 2013 itineraries are now available. Lay away your vacation today and receive up to a $500 Visa gift card when you book an Adventures by Disney destination vacation by calling Magical Travel at 866-207-8387 or visit them online at magicaltravel.com to receive a free price quote, and be sure to mention Inside the Magic to receive that free Disney gift card for qualifying bookings when you book your Disney vacation with Magical Travel. And thanks very much to listeners and viewers like you, and like Vanessa Prince for a very generous donation this week, and of course all of our monthly recurring donation subscribers as well, and anybody clicking through those affiliate links over on the website all supports the show very much, and I thank you for that. And now, let's get started with a trip around the world. And there is not that much news to talk about this week. It's the middle of the summer. Here we are. Hopefully everybody had a good July 4th, a good Independence Day. And, I didn't do anything terribly special. There's a lot going on in Orlando every year, and all the theme parks, the fireworks and all that. And, it's all big and crowded whenever that happens. So Michelle and I actually went over to Dave & Buster's, played some video games, and that's about it. Didn't even really see any fireworks. But hopefully everybody did whatever was exciting and fun for you on the 4th of July. Of course, the last few weeks we've been talking extensively about Cars Land, Buena Vista Street, and the new Disney California Adventure, and I've gotten some comments wondering why haven't I been talking about Walt Disney World all that much lately. It's been Disneyland focused, and well, there's one important point, of course, is that Disneyland has had so much excitement going on lately, and I'll be talking even a little bit more about that later in this week's show. Not those topics in particular, but some other related topics, but more so, there's not really a whole lot going on at Walt Disney World right now. If there was news, like I was talking about the Cars Wing over at Art of Animation, either last week or a couple of weeks ago, I guess it was. But other than that, not a whole lot really going on anywhere at this point. It is the middle of the summer, and that means the theme parks here in Orlando, as well as those in Anaheim and California, really everywhere, are just crowded. It's hot, and it's the time of year when Disney and all the theme parks really just kind of, set their sights on maintaining the park for the day-to-day experience for the guests who are there. They don't, really roll a whole lot out new necessarily around this time, but that doesn't mean we don't have plenty to talk about this week once the little bit of news is over. So let's jump right into that now. And actually, the first little bit of news is kind of looking ahead for the coming days, because there's going to be quite a lot happening outside of theme parks in the coming days, and it's something that I have already mentioned here on the show once before, but it's worth repeating again because now it's just a few days away, and that is the San Diego Comic-Con, a big event that Disney is definitely taking part in a big way this year. It starts on Wednesday night with a preview night of the show floor, and then continuing for 4 days after that, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, there will be many panel discussions, Q&A sessions, exhibits, etc. happening. I've also lined up a whole bunch of really great interviews that are all Disney-related this year, and that I'm really excited about. Topics to be discussed throughout the San Diego Comic-Con include Tim Burton's Frankenweenie, Oz the Great and Powerful, Wreck-It Ralph. Those 3 movies are going to be coming out from Walt Disney Studios within the next year or so, some sooner than others. There's Epic Mickey, or Disney Epic Mickey 2, so that will be discussed, as well as Disney XD's Tron Uprising, a show that I've thoroughly been enjoying so far, and hopefully all you Tron fans out there have been watching it. It's definitely a good one. Even beyond Disney, of course, I'm really looking forward to a few other topics, and actually many other things that I'll be exploring throughout Comic-Con. So my focus on covering throughout the 4.5 days while there will certainly be Disney, but you can look forward to seeing even more outside of the Disney universe over on our website, InsideTheMagic.net, as well as certainly follow us on Twitter and Facebook to stay on top of all of it. So related to all of that, I did mention Oz the Great and Powerful, and that is a movie that is in the works right now from Walt Disney Studios. And this week, just in time for Comic-Con, Disney put out the first poster, a teaser poster for the film that is brand new and showing a glimpse of what the film is going to look like. It features a lot of swirling tornado activity, of course. It is Wizard of Oz related, along with a hot air balloon, a glimpse of the Emerald City in the distance, and the logo for the film at the bottom with a yellow brick road as well. So it's looking like it's going to be a good film just based on this this poster. It's going to be directed by Sam Raimi, who will be there at San Diego Comic-Con, and it's exploring the origins of the Wizard of Oz, the character as it is, kind of a prequel to the Wizard of Oz that everybody knows from years ago. James Franco will be playing that lead character, along with in the other stars in the film will be Mila Kunis, Rachel Weisz, Michelle Williams, and many others. Oz the Great and Powerful will be in theaters on March 8th, 2013, so it's still a while away before we get to see the actual movie. Also related to things that will be going on at Comic-Con, Marvel's The Avengers, of course, did very well at the box office, and in anticipation of the upcoming Blu-ray and DVD release of Marvel's The Avengers, Disney has released a second screen application available for iPad and computers, as well as iPhone for the very first time. And this is also the first time Disney has released a second screen app for a movie prior to the movie coming out on Blu-ray, and that's because there's a tie-in directly to the San Diego Comic-Con coming up this week. You can tap on the Item 47 section of the app, and in there you'll be able to, as they put it, become a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent and participate in the Item 47 Comic-Con experience, either remotely or in the field. You don't have to be there, but if you are there and you follow along, apparently there will be some sort of scavenger hunt or something like that that will lead people to a screening of this new Item 47 Marvel short that they will be debuting at Comic-Con that will be available sometime thereafter for everybody to see. And there's other things you can look at, of course, in the app, but that's definitely the focus for the moment and the reason why they've released it early ahead of that September 25th release date for The Avengers. So that app is free. You can go check it out in the iTunes Store. But let's move away from all of that, away from Comic-Con. If you remember a few weeks ago, actually about 6-7 weeks ago or so, the first weekend of Star Wars Weekends, I took part in a brand new experience at Disney's Hollywood Studios for this year's Star Wars Weekends out here at Walt Disney World. That experience was called the Carbon Freeze Me experience, in which guests would step inside the famous carbon freezing chamber from Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, and be 3D scanned, pose for a grimacing-looking image. They took a picture, and then ultimately the goal was to freeze people in carbonite, or at least produce a little figurine that would finally show up weeks and weeks later, and mine finally did. And of course, for those of you watching the video version, I've got it right here, and it turned out really great. I am quite impressed with how much it really does look like me. It's a bit out of focus there, but It's it's about 7.5, 8 inches tall. Feels very fragile, actually, to the touch. I wouldn't want to drop it for sure, but the likeness of the face is really phenomenal. It absolutely looks just like me. Of course, the hair is very different. It's got Han Solo's hairdo and body on there, but the actual image of my face that they produced and in a 3D printing is really fantastic. I am impressed. It ended up being about $122, including shipping and tax, which is expensive. But now that I've received it, I think it's definitely it's obviously a very unique collectible, and I'm very, very impressed with how much it does indeed look like me. Now, what am I going to do with it? I'm really not sure. Now I've got myself encased in carbonite in 7.5-inch form, and I guess I'll hang it on my wall or put it on a shelf or something with all my other Star Wars collectibles. I don't know. It's just one of those things I had to try, and now I've done it. I'm happy. Unfortunately, a lot of people have not yet received theirs. It seems to be a major delay in the process. I was actually supposed to get it. I was told it would be 3 to 4 weeks. Or so, and it ended up being apparently about 6 to 7 weeks, and some people still have not received theirs. So hopefully everybody will eventually get them. But I'm impressed. I think they did a good job with it. So no complaints from me other than kind of a high price. So a little bit of news this week from Walt Disney World. Apparently the California Grill over at Disney's Disney's Contemporary Resort. I've still got Star Wars on the brain, obviously. At Disney's Contemporary Resort, the California Grill will be closing on January 6, 2013. Don't worry, it's not closing permanently. It's closing just for a few months. Actually going to open in late summer, as Disney's putting it, of 2013. So it's going to be several months that it will be closed. It's going to have a new decor, new menu, really a refreshing of the restaurant. So if you're a big fan of California Grill, you're going to want to get out there as soon as possible. You've got till basically the end of this year to experience it as it has been for many years before they sort of reinvent that restaurant. And we are in July, and that means sometime in the next few weeks, we're going to start seeing some Halloween information trickling in from all the biggest events, be it Halloween Horror Nights over at Universal Orlando, Hallow-Scream over at Busch Gardens, even Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. Hopefully, we will get something new out of that event this year. But, and actually, the teasing has already begun with Friday the 13th less than a week away. We've heard from the folks over at Busch Gardens, Tampa Bay for Hallow-Scream. Apparently, their zombie mortuary haunted house from last year will be returning, which is great. I think that was an excellent haunted house, a new one for last year. And the older one that's been around for quite a number of years, Death Row Vengeance, is not returning. Apparently that has seen its final days. So interesting there. Apparently we'll find out more about that on Friday the 13th in just a few days. So always looking forward to this time of year. Just a couple of more quick news stories here. These two were actually sent over to me by a pair of listeners alerting me. One is Joey, who wanted to let me know, and I did know about this. I just forgot to mention it on recent shows, so thanks to Joey for reminding me to mention that the popular Disney game, the app for iPhone and iPad called Where's My Water, has a new version starring Perry the Platypus from Phineas and Ferb. It's called Where's My Perry. Very similar game to Where's My Water, but of course starring Agent P and all of that. So if you're a fan of Phineas and Ferb, you might want to pick up that app. And then Joe, somebody different from Joey. Joe wanted to let me know that there's a current Disneyland contest at disney.go.com/partners/make-memories from Disney and Verizon that is going to send winners, a person and 3 guests, on a Cars Land vacation, as well as get a new Verizon wireless phone with the Disney Mobile Magic app. So any of you itching to get out to Cars Land, maybe that'll be a good way to do so. And believe it or not, that is it for your news from around the world this week. So while we've been talking about all the new things for Disney California Adventure, Buena Vista Street, and Cars Land over the last few weeks, you have to remember that not everything at California Adventure has changed. There's still a pretty considerable amount of the park that has remained the same amidst all of the construction over the last 5 years. That's the Condor Flats area around Soarin' and the Grizzly River Run area, and that is where this week's tip comes in from Susan, where she writes, next time you ride Grizzly River Run at Disney California Adventure and you don't want to get your camera to get wet, there are a few lockers available for free behind the Disney Vacation Club booth to the left of the ride entrance, but they are only good for 2 hours, so don't forget to reclaim your valuables after the ride. Susan, great tip there. It's always good to keep your electronics and everything safe, and I know we've shared tips before about keeping it in a plastic bag or other various ideas while you're on the rides, be it Grizzly River Run out there or Kali River Rapids, very similar ride out here in Florida, but it's good to know that there are indeed some lockers as well to help you out as long as you get your stuff back within those 2 hours. So there's the tip. Everyone else out there, email your tips into tips@insidethemagic.net. So now I do want to talk a little bit more about something at Disney California Adventure that I have been, haven't been avoiding it really necessarily, but it's something I haven't been thrilled to talk about yet. Cars Land certainly took priority, then Buena Vista Street, which I loved, and then there's something called Mad Tea Party, which, based on the fact that you're hearing Tron Legacy music here in the background, you should know my feelings about the Mad Tea Party, which is the nighttime party that's taking place over at Disney California Adventure that has taken the place of ElecTRONica, which anybody who's been paying attention to Inside the Magic for months and months now, in fact, a year and a half ago, even more than that, is when ElecTRONica first debuted back in, I think it was October 2010. I was a big fan of ElecTRONica. That's certainly no secret, and when it was announced that that was closing, I certainly had to go out there and say my goodbyes to that event, and now I have had a chance to experience the Mad Tea Party. I didn't want to comment on it too much here before seeing it in person based on just online videos or photos, etc. I wanted to see and experience this for myself, and I did just that a few weeks ago when I was out in California, and I must say my opinions have not changed much, honestly, about this experience since then. It was pretty much exactly as I had imagined it was going to be from seeing some videos and seeing some photos online. There are some good elements to it, but overall as an experience, personally, it's probably not right for me. However, it is definitely able to reach a much larger audience, and I will certainly explain here. The Mad Tea Party is a much smaller experience in the Hollywood Land section of Disney California Adventure theme park. It doesn't stretch all the way down the street as ElecTRONica did, but rather is sort of contained within the area just in front of the Monsters Inc. ride in that smaller area. And as soon as you enter into the Mad Tea Party through this, what they're calling a rabbit hole. And I must say, this is a very cool entrance to the whole thing, whereas ElecTRONica had this wonderful opening moment, and then the grid was activated, and you got to walk down the street, and that was very cool, and you walk under the recognizer and everything. Here in Mad Tea Party, you enter through this fog-filled, brightly colored, brightly lit rabbit hole, as they're putting in. Big archway with glowing lights and bright pinks and reds and oranges and all of that, so despite it being a little bit slippery in there, it was a cool way to enter. However, when you walked right through, you would then come across the main stage of the Mad Tea Party, where the first thing that you would be encountering is the Mad Tea Party Band. This band is made up of a couple of singers and musicians inspired by the characters from Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland. There's a lead singer who is inspired by the Mad Hatter and dressed up as the Mad Hatter, sort of, kind of. And then there is Alice, of course, who is also one of the singers. And then you get into some of the band members who are dressed as some of the other secondary characters from Alice in Wonderland. And even there are some dancers in the audience who are kind of, sort of, dressed Alice-ish, although, a little bit sort of twist on even the Tim Burton variation on it. And, before I even give you my thoughts specifically on the Mad Tea Party Band, I just want to share a clip of what they sound like and let you sort of form your own impressions on what you think of this band. And for those of you who are Disneyland locals, I'm sure you've already experienced this in person and you've already formed your own opinions. But those of you who have not been to Mad Tea Party, maybe this will be your first experience with them. And, well, anyway, here's the Mad Tea Party Band. So you hear they play some older songs. This is The Police from many years ago, but they also play some more contemporary songs as well, which you will hear in just a minute as Alice takes the stage.
Glass is empty. Time for a refill! You can choose to let it go. We can always party on our own. So raise your glass if you are wrong. It's not the right way. All my brothers know. We will never be anything but loud. And nitty gritty, dirty little green. Won't you come on and raise your glass? And come on and raise your glass. Won't you come on and raise your glass? And come on and raise your glass.
If I'm not mistaken, that was a Pink song, which is a much more recent song than anything by The Police. And the band is not awful. The musicians, I think, certainly are good. But I think the singers, particularly Alice, could maybe possibly use a little bit of work, to be nice. I did find the singers often out of tune, unfortunately, as they were singing their way through a variety of songs from the years. So I'm not a big fan, needless to say, of the Mad Tea Party Band. I didn't hear them play any of the music that I am normally partial to. I have many bands over the years that I like, and I would love to hear covers of such bands, but generally kind of radio-friendly pop rock is not my thing, and so I think no matter how well this band played those songs, I wouldn't necessarily thoroughly enjoy them. I did enjoy the DJ spun tunes of ElecTRONica quite a bit more. Fortunately, there is also, when the band is not on stage, there is a DJ that also plays Mad Tea Party. In fact, as many of the same DJs that played ElecTRONica, except now they're referred to as the White Rabbit DJs. I don't really know what else to say about the music of the Mad Tea Party. It kind of leaves me a bit at a loss. The White Rabbit DJs certainly spin the same sort of tunes that they did at ElecTRONica. In fact, a lot of the exact same music, and the crowd seems to get a little bit more then, but it's really about the demographic switch here. There's a sort of a different audience, I think, being reached when it comes to the Mad Tea Party versus the ElecTRONica that was there before, and I think at some point you, I guess, just have to stop comparing the two and just focus on what it is now and who Disney's trying to reach, which ElecTRONica certainly had a limited scope. Those who were Trons fans, those who were fans of electronic music, etc., which is not necessarily the same group of fans that were part of the classic rock / pop group. So the old end of line club that was part of ElecTRONica is now the House of Cards, and it is still sort of an area where you can sit around and lounge a little bit. It's been reconfigured slightly, and also for those looking to have a drink, there's another section over where Laserman used to be, relatively in that area. There's a Drink Me bar serving some specialty drinks in Mad Tea Party, but that was never really my thing when it came to ElecTRONica. I wasn't there for drinking, and I just was there for the environment and sitting in sort of that Tron atmosphere, which I really always enjoyed. And I can't say the same about the Mad Tea Party. I didn't necessarily enjoy the atmosphere that was being produced there, particularly with the way that the Mad Tea Party throws your attention back and forth. This is really what I think kind of bugged me the most about the experience. There is that main stage where I mentioned there's the DJ playing music there, and then there's also a secondary stage right near the House of Cards, formerly the End of Line Club, and that secondary stage sort of alternates with the main stage, literally, where the band will come out, play a few songs, say, now I want everybody to look over to the other stage, and then something will happen on the other stage. There's a couple of different acts I'll talk about in a second there, and when they're done, they'll say, okay, now everybody go back to the main stage for the DJ, and then when the DJ's done, it flips back to the secondary stage, and it's like back and forth. You can never just stay in one spot for a long period of time. It's maybe 15 minutes at a time, and then you have to move, and then you have to come back and move back and forth, and it's just a bit bizarre how that is set up, throwing your attention left and right, or maybe you just want to stand there and party and dance and have a good time. So that, I think, was the oddest part of the Mad Tea Party to me. Well, no, that's not true. The oddest part of the Mad Tea Party was what took place on the secondary stage and the best I can do is just let it be sort of introduced by the folks who are there, the hosts of Mad Tea Party, if you will. They are Dee and Dumb. They are inspired by Tweedledee and Tweedledum, of course. In fact, that's actually who they are. They are tall guys who are bald and twins, and sort of similar to Tim Burton's Tweedledee and Tweedledum, and a little bit different than they looked in Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland. But anyway, let's take a look at what they had to introduce on that secondary stage.
This next coming transformational treat. Did you hear that?
Of course I heard that. Did you hear that?
Well, I heard it, but what did it say?
Who are you?
I'm Tweedledum. Why do you ask?
No, I didn't ask you. I asked. You said, what did it say?
All right, so tell me what it says.
It said, who are you?
It's me, Tweedledum. Dee, we've known each other for years.
Bro, I don't think I get my point. You asked what did it ask, and I tell you. But we're not going to the stage. Come on, buddy.
This next act will make you say, what can it be?
What you see, you'll see, and then you'll agree.
I have seen Who Are You up
And
close.
so am I. I am too. You won't believe what this thing can do.
those of you watching the video version of this show can certainly see exactly what Who Are You is, but for those of you simply listening to the audio version, let me describe a small stage, relatively small stage, with a rainbow-colored giant slinky man kind of squirming and gyrating and maneuvering around, flailing its extremities, and a very bizarre sight. Apparently this is a third-party act that Disney found, much like Laserman was, brought him in for the Mad Tea Party to perform on this stage, and it's one of those things that you think this is just the coolest thing ever, and it's just mesmerizing, or you just kind of stare at it like, what in the world am I looking at? I think I was somewhere in between. I found it amusing, but definitely not something I would want to see on a regular basis like Laserman was. Laserman was one of those experiences that you at first think, oh yeah, there's some lasers, there's some fog, no big deal, and then once it really got going, you think, wow, how did they do that? Whereas this slinky thing is just something that you just kind of stare with your jaw dropped open, wondering what exactly it is that you're looking at. So for those of you not watching the video right at the moment, head on over to our YouTube channel or InsideTheMagic.net, and you can see exactly what it is. It's certainly a very bizarre sight, to say the least. So anyway, moving on, the Mad Tea Party from there is still another experience that is part of it, and it's one of those things that I think unto itself is fun, but what it replaced was even better. And whether you're a Tron fan or not, I think you might agree. This is the Mad Arcade has replaced Flynn's Arcade, and Flynn's Arcade was this cool retro arcade. Whether you knew the connection to the Tron films or not, you know, Flynn and all of that, it was still an 80s style video arcade where you could play all these old video games. Very cool. You know, who isn't gonna like going and playing Donkey Kong and Pac-Man and all of these old games from decades ago? Well, now that concept has kind of been reinvented for the Mad Tea Party into the Mad Arcade, featuring sort of games of skill like skee ball or you know, little basketball shooting arcade games where the hoop moves back and forth, and little ball gun games, and they've all been rethemed to Alice in Wonderland. They're customized to this Mad Arcade, so you'll see, you know, shooting at the teeth of the Cheshire Cat in a ball shooting game and things like that, and then it continues throughout the very bright sort of black-lit look of this Mad Arcade. It's definitely doesn't have that same feeling of what you could be in for hours and hours just blasting away at asteroids, or, you know, sending Mario up and down you know, the Donkey Kong rows and all of that. It's you know, it's fun to be in there for a little while, and it does open it up to a bit more of the audience. You know, anybody who didn't necessarily grow up with joysticks and button mashing and all of that, perhaps some of the older generations can still take part in these, I guess. I don't know. It definitely seems like Mad Tea Party as a whole is an attempt to really extend the ElecTRONica concept to a bigger audience who may not be electronic music fans, may not be Tron fans, may not have grown up in that 80s, 90s era, but instead want to, you know, as if Disney wanted to reach out and take sort of the same party concept to the next, to a broader audience who might have otherwise been turned away or turned off by the experience that was ElecTRONica. So it's not, you know, not necessarily for me, but perhaps some of the less hardcore Tron fans do enjoy Mad Tea Party a little bit more. But you know what? I wanted all these questions to be answered, honestly. I didn't want to just leave it unto my own opinions. So while I was out in Disneyland a few weeks ago, I had a chance to talk to Robin Trowbridge, who is one of the entertainment show directors at the Disneyland Resort. He was in charge of essentially the creation of ElecTRONica, again in reinventing ElecTRONica into the Mad Tea Party. Definitely the top guy to talk to about the topic here. And so, naturally, I want to share our interview. We were standing in the middle of the Mad Tea Party discussing it all, and, of course, I asked him just why, oh why, did they move from ElecTRONica to Mad Tea Party, and where we went from there. So let's jump on over to Disney California Adventure to talk to Robin Trowbridge about the whole experience. Hi, Robin. We're pretty good. Obviously, standing here at the Mad Tea Party. Would you mind just telling me real quick, what is your role here at the Disneyland Resort?
I am an entertainment show director.
So you've been in charge of all kinds of entertainment, not only Mad Tea Party, but my personal favorite, which was ElecTRONica.
Oh, yes, I did have a little something to do with ElecTRONica. We were probably working the same blog site type of stuff.
Before we get into the Mad Tea Party, let me ask you, why did you change it from ElecTRONica to Mad Tea Party? Was it a guest response or just time to have something new?
Yeah, I think that's all it was. It was just the company was deciding to, do different directions. We had obviously a big grand opening, so it was just something to mix up. We always want to offer something new, something fun. It seemed like a good time to do it.
So when making that transition from ElecTRONica to Tea Party, there's been some obvious changes. We got a live band behind us instead of just DJs all the way through. Very different theme. Do you feel like Mad Tea Party is going to reach a different audience?
Well, we hope that it still brings back the same audience. We'd love to have everybody back, but it was just an opportunity to explore, again, with the band, like you said, just explore and see what else we can offer. Does it change things? Do we get a better demographic? Do we get more people sticking around? I think we had a good platform with ElecTRONica. We knew things that we could do, so we just gave it a mad twist and put it out on its, put it out here to see what happens. Right.
So tell me a little bit about the different elements of the Mad Tea Party besides the band that we have behind us.
Of course. Well, we have two different activated areas. This is our main stage area, and if you guys make it your way over there to the House of Cards, that's sort of our two main, really gigantic entertainment activation areas, right? So the band. We still have some dancers come out. We have our own dance crew called the Hottest Deck in Town. We bring out a specialty act up on our stage, but definitely just sort of because of all the reconstruction on the boulevard, our party had to be more intimate and all within the Hollywoodland here.
It doesn't invade the daytime space quite as much.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. We were held to those limitations, so we had to figure out, well, how do we have as big of a party in a smaller, more intimate area? And so it was about utilizing this area as a lounge, this area building our own main stage to pull people out. And I think we've done a pretty good job. What about you?
You've packed an enormous amount of entertainment into a very small space.
Yeah.
I think I just walked through the new arcade in there.
Yeah, the Mad Arcade, absolutely.
I loved Flynn's Arcade. I'm a big Tron fan from the original and all of that, and I was sad to see that go. But I think I heard about the games that were going to go in there. I thought, then maybe I'm not really a fan of that. I like the retro games. But I walked in through there. It was really fun to see how they're sort of the classic skee ball and those sort of games, but with that Alice in Wonderland twist on it.
Great, glad to hear that. That, for me, coming from ElecTRONica, I knew that was going to be something special. Flynn's Arcade is classic, iconic. How do you make a different experience in there? So by taking all the games and retheming them to Alice in Wonderland, I think that was what made it different. And again, games that adults and kids can play, opened up their variety, but theming it out was important for us to do.
I felt like ElecTRONica was a little bit more of an adult party than a Mad Tea Party is. Do you feel like more kids can get involved here?
I'll let other people decide that, but I definitely think that Mad Tea Party is for everybody. I think because we're bringing some classic rock in, you'll see dads and moms with young kids by the end of the night, still rocking it out, still having a good time. But then we offer the opportunities for dance with the DJ and the rabbits, and we give more of that kind of house music. Sure. Yeah, but maybe I hope so. I hope everybody enjoys it, really.
And one more question: Flynn's Arcade ever gonna make a comeback anywhere? Disney Quest in Orlando would be awesome.
Well, I think that maybe a little piece of Flynn's Arcade in my little cubicle area would be nice. I don't know of any plans to bring it back, but it's certainly those games are fantastic.
But Mad Tea Party is going to be sticking around for quite a while.
We're going to be here for a long while. We're grounded, so I'm so hoping to keep it activated, do new things, really kind of energize it throughout the year. Same thing we did with ElecTRONica.
So anybody coming to the new Disney California Adventure is going to be able to see Mad Tea Party along with everything else.
Absolutely, absolutely. 7 days a week through the summer, Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, and holiday weeks once we go down.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for talking with me. Show director, entertainment show director, Robin Trowbridge, talking about the Mad Tea Party and the transition from ElecTRONica over. Obviously, as I said to him, I was a big fan of ElecTRONica. I've said it here, and can't say I'm as big of a fan of Mad Tea Party. However, watching others take part in the Mad Tea Party, it definitely seems like an experience that more of Disney's average day guests can take part in. It's not necessarily geared to this one specific audience or two specific audiences as ElecTRONica seems to have been, whereas a Mad Tea Party kind of reaches beyond that. unfortunately, I'm not part of that new audience. I can't say that I'm ever looking forward to going back to the Mad Tea Party again myself. But we'll see where it goes from here. He did say, like ElecTRONica did over time, some adjustments will be made to Mad Tea Party, perhaps some new items added, taken away, things made, and of course, Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland did very, very well at the box office, and I can understand Disney's decision to move over to that from ElecTRONica, where Tron Legacy didn't do so well at the box office, though it does have a large following, and Tron Uprising is doing well on Disney XD right now. Alice in Wonderland, Tron, Alice has a much bigger impact on the world than Tron ever did. So, kind of a toss-up there. So anyway, there it is, Mad Tea Party. Obviously not a personal fan, but go check it out for yourself, see what you think. I mean, there's no reason not to head out to Disney California Adventure at this point. At this point, the changes that have gone on in this park are phenomenal. The park has an impressive amount of new things. Mad Tea Party being part of the grand picture of the new Disney California Adventure that is Cars Land, that is Buena Vista Street, and just the general better feeling of the whole park. Mad Tea Party is just one small element, and whether or not you are a fan of the Mad Tea Party, you can't argue that Disney California Adventure as a whole has been improved upon, and it is somewhere that every Disney fan definitely needs to visit. And continuing and sort of rounding out this Disney California Adventure, this new Disney California Adventure coverage here, I've got just a few more interview clips from the grand opening time a few weeks ago that I want to share with some of Disney's top Imagineers and executives. A few more snippets. Some of these are people you've heard from in the last few weeks. One is not. And these are sort of some final thoughts on what it means for Disney California Adventure to be reaching this pinnacle, and kind of looking toward the future of where Disney is going to go in this direction. Does the success of Cars Land mean that when new big franchises come out that do very well and are very popular, does it mean we're no longer just going to see a single attraction devoted to those, but instead perhaps see entire lands like Cars Land developed? That's a question that I wondered about. And where does this sit in the entire scope of Disney? So what I want to do now is once again head back over to the Disneyland Resort to hear from a long-time Walt Disney Imagineer Tom Fitzgerald on that very topic. I had a lot to talk to him about over the last few weeks, specifically Cars Land and Buena Vista Street, but now taking a grander picture of what I was just saying here, where exactly does it all sit in the grand scheme of all things Disney?
You mentioned Cars Land being obviously immersive in an environment you want to hang out in, and it's all based on one property, one franchise. And with Avatar coming up, and you've got Grizzly Gulch overseas as well as Mystic Point, is that kind of the future of Imagineering? Is these greater, not just one ride, but a whole land?
I think you're going to see a blend. I think there will be genre. There'll continue to be genre lands. I think there will be, you're starting to see, mini lands, Toy Story Playland and Grizzly Gulch, or, sort of mini lands. And then occasionally you'll see things where a property is so strong and so compelling a world to step into that it wants to be, it wants to be bigger. That was really the root of Cars Land, which started off as Car Land. That was a celebration of the car culture in California. That Kevin Rafferty and the team were working on, and didn't even realize at the time that Pixar was starting work on the Cars film. So we knew nothing about it. And at a certain point, it was a John Lasseter moment of saying, you guys need to come up to Pixar and see what we're working on. And as soon as they did, the light bulb went off and said, oh, this would be much more fun. I mean, yes, we could do what we did before, but as soon as you saw that fun twist on turning Route 66 into the fantasy of the Cars film, you said, well, that would be just so cool to hang out into. And I think, if you've had the chance to, it really is. I mean, and all the fun twists on the cozy cones, and even down to the fact that the landscapers found plants that have orange cones. I don't know if you see that. When you go next time, look, the bushes that are between the cozy cones, they actually have orange cones in the flowers. You just can see how the designers had so much fun with building on that, and then that's when you know you've got.
The winner indeed, Disney California Adventure, the new Disney California Adventure that is, can most definitely be called a winner from Cars Land all the way down to Buena Vista Street and through and through. I want to talk to Disneyland Resort President George Kalogridis now about sort of some just general overview thoughts on what it means for all of these upgrades to come to the Disneyland Resort. Let's go to the red carpet on grand opening night of Cars Land a couple weeks ago. We're here at Cars Land, something unique to Disneyland out here, culminating this 5-year expansion of the resort. In your tenure here at Disneyland, how do you feel about all these changes? You know, is it quite possibly the most exciting time in Disneyland history?
Oh, no question. Yeah, especially because this has been a 5-year project where for the last really 3 years in a row we have delivered great new content. And so for us it's just been 1 year after another and getting more exciting. This certainly is the largest part of the expansion that we're opening now, and so it sort of puts a bow around everything, and we just couldn't be happier.
And just got happier is indeed the motto for the Disneyland Resort now that the Disney California Adventure has reopened, essentially. I also talked to chairman of Walt Disney Parks and Resorts on the red carpet, Tom Staggs, about the very topic. So here he is as well. What do you think an expansion on the size of not only Cars Land, but everything that's been going on for the past 5 years here at California Adventure means to Walt Disney Parks and Resorts as a whole?
Well, I think that we've said that we didn't believe California Adventure really delivered on all the promise of a Disney Parks and a Disney Parks Vacation. I think this transformation takes it to that level where it really is a true complementary and worthy neighbor of Disneyland. And that's a tall order, of course, because that's where it all started. That's the park that Walt built. And we're incredibly proud of this place and a little bit humble at the opportunity to try to set it up in that way. And I think everybody's come together to really...
And do you feel that's sort of the future of Disney parks, is building these more immersive entire environments like Avatar coming up at Animal Kingdom?
You know, I think that you'll see a blend. Avatar will be about being immersed in those stories, but the new Fantasyland is an opportunity to tell many of our stories in a setting that's magical and fantastic. So we want to make sure that we're looking at both opportunities to do those things. All in all, though, it's all about immersing our guests in places and in stories that they can really relate to, that they love, and that they want to share with the people they love.
Now, we've heard from Tom Staggs and George Kalogridis a few times over the last few weeks, but now I want to bring on a woman who is in charge of both of them and oversees everything at not only Disneyland Resort, Walt Disney World Resort, but also Disneyland Resort Paris, and that is Meg Crofton, president of all of that, to weigh in with her thoughts on the Disney California Adventure expansion. We're standing here at the grand opening of Cars Land. What does it mean for the Disneyland Resort not only to be opening this expansion, but also completing this 5-year, very expensive addition to the resort?
You know, this was really a vision to listen. We listened to our guest feedback, and it was really a vision to reopen Disney's California Adventure by putting more of what our guests love: the characters, the storytelling, the Disney DNA into the park. And I think we have absolutely delivered on that. From the time that our guests walk into our new main street, Buena Vista Street, and feel the energy of maybe what Walt would have felt when he came to Los Angeles in the 1920s with a dream, to going into our new spectacular 12-acre Cars Land. It's just amazing. So whether it's the atmosphere, the storytelling, the entertainment, the rides and attractions, I think our guests are going to have an amazing time here.
You used the word reopening. Do you consider this a whole new Disney California Adventure?
We believe that this has significantly changed the Disney's California Adventure experience for our guests, and we're really proud of that.
And they should be proud. It's been a wonderful experience for everybody involved, I'm sure, on the Disney end, as well as any guests who have had a chance to experience it. And, overall, I've had a wonderful time, of course, experiencing it all at Disney California Adventure and covering it for everybody. So hopefully you've enjoyed all of the coverage of Cars Land and Buena Vista Street, now Mad Tea Party, and moving on from there. Of course, you can find all of it over at InsideTheMagic.net, summaries of everything, articles, videos, photos, etc., if you want to see even more. But that pretty much wraps it up from the last few weeks, finally, after so long of talking about it. Disney California Adventure now reopen as almost a new park. A new entrance area, a new main street, if you will, Cars Land expansion, Mad Tea Party, and plenty more fun. And as I said, Disneyland's slogan for all of it is that the happiest place on earth just got happier, and indeed it did. I've enjoyed it tremendously. And so, with that said, we do have a little bit more to cover this week that is not related to Disney California Adventure, but still some theme park fun. But before we jump into that, I do have some obligations here on the show, one of which is to tell you a little bit about Lanyard Lab. That is a business that I run when I'm not doing Inside the Magic, and it's over at lanyardlab.com if you've got a business to promote, a business of your own, or maybe you just need to wear name tags or ID cards around your neck, whether around a church or a school or even at a convention. Getting custom lanyard from us over at lanyardlab.com. It's a great place to do it by simply filling out our free quote request form. Click on anywhere that says get a quote, send all your information to us. We'll email you back with a price quote along with a proof showing you what the lanyards will look like, and from there it's simple to place the order online. So again, the website is lanyardlab.com. And now I want to talk about something completely different than Disney California Adventure that surprisingly had its grand opening this week, although it has been, I've already talked about it here, and it's been open for a number of weeks. It's officially open now over at Universal Orlando, and that is Despicable Me Minion Mayhem, the newest and latest attraction to make its way to Orlando. While we're all sitting around waiting for New Fantasyland to roll something out to Walt Disney World, Universal is over there just cracking away and opening up new attractions and a lot of demolition and construction going on, a lot of mystery surrounding what's going on around those parks, and it has a lot of people excited. And of course, Despicable Me Minion Mayhem, an attraction that replaced Jimmy Neutron's Nicktoon Blast, which in itself was a motion simulator attraction that replaced the old Hanna-Barbera attraction, which I had a big fondness for. But the new version, it is entertaining. I finally got around to watching Despicable Me the film before attending the grand opening this week, and while I can't say that I'm a huge fan of the movie Despicable Me, I do enjoy the attraction. I know I mentioned a few things about it a few weeks ago when I had a chance to go into the soft opening of the ride, so I'm not going to talk about the ride itself other than to sort of reiterate that it is a 3D motion simulator attraction, big 4K HD 3D screen, that it looks phenomenal, it sounds phenomenal. If you're a big fan of Despicable Me, and particularly of the Minions, the little yellow, funny sounding and looking guys, which are probably the best part of the movie in my opinion anyway, the ride is enjoyable for what it is. It's not a big e-ticket, to use Disney's term, attraction, but for a 3D motion simulator that doesn't really go anywhere, it's just a big room with a big bunch of seats that bounce around, it is an enjoyable attraction. But what I want to do now is bring you to the grand opening itself to actually sort of let you hear about Despicable Me Minion Mayhem from the folks who were involved in its creation. Of course, Universal Orlando rolled out the yellow carpet as it is in honor of the Minions, along with plenty of Minions and lots of kids dressed up as Minions for the grand celebration. And just like any attraction opening, there was a lot of confetti and streamers and music and dancing and a big hoopla, and even some of the stars from the film were there. Of course, the film's an animated movie, a computer-generated movie, so the stars of the movie are not only the costume characters, but also the voice actors who lent their voices to the film. And in this case, unfortunately, the lead actor of the film, Steve Carell, voice of Gru, was not there, nor was the villain voice, but the three girls were indeed in attendance, and that was Dana Gare, Elsie Fisher, and Miranda Cosgrove. And I also had a chance, in addition to talking to Miranda Cosgrove briefly about her role, I had a chance to talk to a couple of the ride's creators as well. So that's what I want to share with you now briefly, just to sort of clue you in as to how Despicable Me Minion Mayhem came about, and what the attraction really means to be at Universal Orlando. And even some of you may be thinking, why Despicable Me? Of all attractions Universal could feature, why that one? And I think this may clue you in a little bit on that as well. So let's hop on over to the yellow carpet right near the entrance of Universal Studios Florida to talk to executive producer of Despicable Me Minion Mayhem, and I believe he's a former Walt Disney Imagineer as well. His name is Mike. Here at Universal Studios Florida seems to be a common theme with yellow characters around here. The Simpsons, SpongeBob, now the Minions of Despicable Me. What's the connection there?
It's a great color. Yellow's a very happy color.
And of course the bananas help too.
The bananas. Minion loves bananas.
All right, so talk to me about the transition between Hanna-Barbera to Jimmy Neutron and now to Despicable Me. Similarities, differences between the attractions?
Well, this is an entirely new experience. Despicable Me, Minion Mayhem, first of all, went from film to state-of-the-art, high-def, 3D, 4K resolution, 3D technology that is absolutely mind-boggling. It is so crisp, so clear, draws guests right in. Obviously, we changed the exterior of the attraction because we wanted guests to understand that this is something completely new, completely different. The interior of the attraction has entirely new spaces that we've created. Gru's living room, that area didn't even exist before. So between adding the outside with our Minions, 33 Minions, building the billboards on the outside, the recruitment billboards, to the 3D experience, to the whole look and feel of it. I mean, it's all about heart and emotion and character, and it just takes the film that was such a big hit and transfers it into a three-dimensional reality.
And what does it mean for guests to become a Minion?
It means they're going to join Gru in an amazing adventure. You join Gru and Edith and Agnes and Margot, and they take you on a training mission. So one minute you're in there dodging a giant fly swatter, and then you're getting smacked with a water cannon, and then you enter the anti-gravity recycling room, and things really go nuts in there. And then at the end, when you're Minion, you get to go out and dance in the Minion dance party. It's the first time we've ever created a post-show experience like this. So the experience doesn't end in the ride. You come and you get to dance and show off your best moves to Boogie Fever.
Inspired by the ending of the movie, of course.
Well, it's inspired by the story that we created.
Okay.
This is a whole new story.
And that story, actually, before I even say that, Mike West was indeed an Imagineer for quite a long time. In fact, he was with Walt Disney Imagineering for about 15 years, worked on Star Tours amongst many other projects. So when I said I believe he was an Imagineer, yes, he most definitely was. So anyway, the story of Despicable Me, Minion Mayhem definitely furthers that of the movie Despicable Me, focusing on the Minions themselves largely and the various antics involved there, and talking a bit more about the Minions and the attraction itself. Here is director of the attraction, Chris Bailey. So what does it mean to bring this property, Despicable Me, and of course Minion Mayhem, here to Universal Studios Florida? Why is it so exciting for this park?
Well, it's a thrill for me. I mean, I was a fan of the movie, and then I love, Universal Orlando, and I love theme parks in general. So to take these characters I love and put them in a thrill ride that still delivers on their character was just perfect for me.
And the characters are walking behind you right now. I'm sure you're. Come on over here, Gru.
I know, we had to become friends over this movie, even though he's a despicable villain.
Right. So bringing, of course, Gru and his family, but the Minions seem to be the real popularity. Why do you think the Minions are so popular among not only guests here, but just fans of the movie?
Well, the Minions, they're just like little creatures running around that don't censor themselves. They like to push each other over, they like to, play with weapons, but if they accidentally hurt a friend, they'll pick them up and hug them. They're just like little kids. So I think that kind of innocence is appealing by definition.
And that was the director of the Despicable Me Minion Mayhem attraction. I've got one more quick interview to share with one of the stars of Despicable Me, Miranda Cosgrove. You might know her from Nickelodeon's iCarly. And I had time just to ask her a couple of quick questions about her thoughts on the new attraction. You've had great success with iCarly, of course, but Despicable Me is a huge movie, now an attraction at Universal. Can you compare sort of the experience working on camera for iCarly versus supplying a voice?
It's definitely very different, but I enjoyed getting to kind of bring the character life and get to be in a little studio in my pajamas, just like not really worrying about, you don't have to worry about how you look or anything. You can just really put it all into the character and give it a lot of energy. It's fun.
And have you had a chance to ride the ride?
Yeah, I rode it twice today and it was awesome. I loved it.
Great. Simple as that. Just a quick, short interview with one of the voice stars of Despicable Me, Miranda Cosgrove. You can head on over to InsideTheMagic.net to see the full grand opening ceremony that Universal Orlando put on for Despicable Me, Minion Mayhem. There, as you can imagine, was a lot of dancing in addition to all the confetti and the streamers and all of that and the Minions. And also check out the ride itself. We've got a clip from the attraction so you can see what the 3D movie is like. Of course, watch it at 2D at home, 3D in the park, and also take a tour through the queue and the post-show area and the store, which is heavily themed as well. Despicable Me Minion Mayhem open now at Universal Studios Florida.
Ricky. Hi, Ricky.
Hey, Ricky.
Hi, Ricky.
Hi, Ricky.
Hey, Ricky.
Ricky, this is amazing.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
Inside the Magic, listener feedback.
So I said at the top of the show, or it may have even been before the show in the chat room, I can't remember either way. I said at some point that this was not going to be a 2-hour show like we did last week or even close to that, and now we're hovering around an hour with lots of listener feedback to get to. So I don't know that I'm going to go through all of the emails that I have sorted through over the last couple of weeks, but I do want to get through as many as possible here without making the show too long, kind of returning everything back to that 1 hour length that I attempt to shoot for every week and generally fail. But anyway, so let's just jump right into it. Actually continuing a topic that we've talked about here over the last last couple of weeks, I guess. Of course, we've talked about Cars Land plenty, and more specifically, we had a listener throw out the question of what kind of a car would Walt Disney be if he were a car in the Cars universe, because at the grand opening of Cars Land, John Lasseter was up there along with Tom Staggs, and Lasseter had put up a couple of graphics showing what Tom Staggs and Bob Iger would look like if they were cars, and that was pretty amusing. And in addition to what kind of a car Walt Disney would have been or would be in the Cars universe, we've also been talking about what name Walt Disney would have in the Cars universe. That's a new subject for this week. But first, let's jump back a little bit and a couple more suggestions about the type of car Walt Disney would be. Armando wrote in and said Walt would have been a Tucker. Just like Walt, this car was way ahead of his time, and few were produced, only 51. Interesting. I guess that explains why I had never heard of that type of car. An interesting suggestion there. Bill wrote in with a suggestion as well. He says, I'm a big car guy and put quite a lot of thought into this. My first thought was that Walt would be a train, as another listener had pointed out as well. Given more thought into the car aspect, I think Walt Disney would have been a 1964 Buick Skyline sports wagon. I know a station wagon seems like an odd idea for a tribute car, but as another listener wrote, I'm picturing Walt in his TV spots wearing the very modern-looking, sleek, thin, lapelled suits of the late 50s, early 60s, and this model Buick fits both of those style criteria. It has a feeling of being both humble and hard-working, while also having the utilitarian, family-friendly aspect of loading up the entire family for a weekend road trip, perhaps to Disneyland. Bill, good suggestion there, and we'll let you kick off the thought about what name Walt Disney perhaps would have as a car in the car universe. Of course, his name is Walt Disney, and Bill suggests perhaps his Cars universe name would be Walt Distributor Cap. Okay, that's one of several suggestions. I'm not sure it'd be easy. It doesn't really flow off the tongue saying, hey, Walt Distributor Cap, how you doing? Not quite as much as maybe John Lasseter does, but here's some more suggestions from a few listeners. Sean suggested Walt Diesel, or Uncle Diesel. I like that one. That's good. Disney Diesel, definitely a very similar sounding name there. Roger suggested Walt Jitney. Got Disney, Jitney, that sounds a lot like, although Jitney probably not the most common car around. Anna suggested Walter Elias Diecast, and I like that one a lot. Diecast, not a specific type of car, but it sounds like Disney, certainly has that tie in there. So pretty amusing. One final suggestion for what Walt Disney's Cars universe name could be comes in from Jessica, who decided Walternator Disney. You know, the alternator, Walternator, yeah. So just a few suggestions there. I couldn't come up with my own. But if anyone else wants to throw some out there, I'll be happy to share them here. Thanks to everybody who has sent them in. So next email on the subject of Cars Land a little bit as well comes in from Chris, who writes, after hearing and seeing your great coverage of the Cars Land grand opening and knowing that you weren't fond of the movie Cars itself, I was wondering if visiting Radiator Springs had changed your opinion on the film. You seem to have a great time with the characters and setting, and I personally would watch Cars 1 over Cars 2 any day. I was hoping your experiences in Cars Land would give you a newfound appreciation for the film. On another note, I wanted to thank you for your wonderful website and podcast. We live in Australia, and we don't get the exposure to everything that is Disney as often as we like. Your coverage is a great way to keep our family in touch with everything we love that is Disney-related. P.S. My 8-year-old daughter said to tell you about the hidden Mickey at the end of the Muppets new movie. Look for the fireworks just before the end credits. Chris, tell your daughter thank you very much. Always good to have an excuse to watch the new Muppets movie. Great movie, and hidden Mickeys are always fun to look for. As for the Cars film itself, I watched Cars, I rewatched Cars, I should say, right before going to Cars Land to get a refresher on the film. As you said, I was never a big fan of the Cars franchise, the Cars movie. I know I said when I saw Cars 2 that I actually liked Cars 2 better than Cars 1. At this point, I'm extremely confused, honestly, because of what you said. After being in Cars Land and loving everything that is Cars Land so much, it does give me a greater appreciation for the movie. But if I look at the movie, just the movie by itself, I'm still not a big fan of it. It's not a phenomenal movie. I'm not a car person. I don't relate to the subject matter at all. But having been there in person to quote-unquote Radiator Springs, yeah, watching the movie now sort of makes me think back to memories of being at Disneyland, and that's a whole different type of connection that you can make. I think that's something that Walt Disney did an amazing job, sort of groundbreaking in the world of promotion when he created Disneyland back in 1955. Sleeping Beauty wasn't even out yet, and yet he was creating Sleeping Beauty Castle as a giant, essentially advertisement promotion for the movie that would be coming out just a couple of years later. And Cars Land can act as that same sort of connection there. You go, you experience it, you meet these characters, and then you can watch their adventure on the big screen or the small screen at home, and it does create that connection that otherwise wouldn't have been there, to have that personal experience involved, which I think is something unique to a theme park that really nothing else can generate that. So yes, in a way, Cars Land has increased my ability to enjoy and like the Cars film, but the movie itself is still just Cars to me. I was just talking about Despicable Me. Same thing happened there. I watched Despicable Me, was not a big fan of the movie. I enjoy the ride, not nearly as much as Cars Land, of course. It's a completely different scale of things, but I actually enjoy the ride, Despicable Me Minion Mayhem, more than I enjoy the movie, Despicable Me. But if I were to go back and watch Despicable Me, well, I saw the movie actually after experiencing the ride, and so I had that sort of visceral connection there that is something more than just watching something on the screen. So anyway, long-winded answer to your question. Next up, an email from Adamir, who writes, my girlfriend and I are celebrating our first anniversary at the Carthay Circle restaurant on the 10th. We met at Disneyland and thus decided to dine at Carthay for our first anniversary, and we have a modest budget, and we never go to this type of restaurant, so we'd like a few tips on what's good on the menu, drinks, gratuity, and so on. P.S. I have the Disney Parks mobile app on my iPhone, but it only gives me general information. Well, I did email back Adamir with a few specific suggestions. The reason I wanted to include this email on the show is, number one, I'm sure other people, other listeners and viewers are wondering about the same thing. What is there great to get? What is not so great? And I talked about quite a bit of this on last week's show in the Buena Vista Street sort of overview that was very long here. So in summary, at Carthay Circle, there's options from small to big, from fairly inexpensive with the quick bites in the lounge all the way up to rather expensive entrees in the main dining room. And I bring it up here to let everybody know that I did sort of post a roundup over on InsideTheMagic.net of Carthay Circle Restaurant, which is the link that I emailed back to Adamir a day or two ago. So if you head on over to InsideTheMagic.net, anybody wondering about Carthay Circle specifically, want to take a look around the inside, sort of sample the food virtually through some pictures and that kind of thing, check out that article, and it'll be the better way to go than me rattling off all the food and getting everybody hungry all over again this week. On another note related to a Disney California Adventure and everything going on out there, Dane writes in and says, I'm a local to Orange County, California, and the other day while visiting a Subway restaurant, I noticed a familiar face on the cover of OC Metro magazine. This year, to honor the opening of Cars Land and the 5-year project, OC Metro featured Disneyland president George Kalogridis on the cover. The magazine also had an interview and a bit of information on the impact the expansion has had on the local economy. OC Metro is a free publication available in a lot of local gas stations or restaurants, and I encourage encourage any ITM listeners who would be interested to pick up a copy while they are in town. Dane, good tip. Always great to be able to pick up a little, extra Disney fun, especially when it is free. And, of course, we were just talking about Universal Orlando, Despicable Me, etc., and Ken wrote in asking, I was at Universal Orlando and noticed they are tearing down the old Hercules and Xena Theater. Do you know what might be coming? Ken, that is a great question because nobody knows. It's a big mystery. In fact, there apparently were some permits filed for what is known as Soundstage 44 there at Universal Studios Florida, a very central location, kind of near the Monsters Cafe and Rip Ride Rocket, sort of in that general area, Mel's Drive-In, etc., and apparently there were some permits filed that one of the haunted houses for Halloween Horror Nights was set to go into that soundstage. Now that soundstage has been demolished, and there are a lot of ideas as to what could go in there. Of course, a lot of people are thinking, it must be Transformers, because Universal Studios Hollywood just opened a Transformers attraction. I would love that. I loved the attraction out there, the ride out there, and I would love to see that come to Orlando. Whether or not that's going to happen, well, we'll wait and see. There have been some rumors of perhaps a year-round haunted house going in there, much like the House of Horrors at Universal Studios Hollywood. I don't know that would fly in the Orlando environment. Halloween Horror Nights, of course, is a huge draw, but I don't know if a day-to-day constant haunted house would necessarily work, but I would certainly be all for it. One of my favorite things of the year right there, so I would be open to that. And there are other rumors flying around, but nobody really knows for sure as to what's going in that location, to answer your question directly, Ken. So we will just have to wait and see what exactly Universal is going to be putting into there. I imagine they'll make an announcement eventually. Of course, they still have yet to announce officially what's replacing Jaws, which is a major construction site as well. But as soon as we know, I will pass that information along. And let's see. Got another email from Katie from the UK who writes, I'm visiting Orlando in late August and normally come over later in the year. I'm really keen to know what the crowd levels and weather will be like at this time of year. Katie, this is always my favorite type of question because it's a pretty constant year to year to year how, the crowd levels in general will be. Obviously, it's tough to predict hour to hour, minute to minute, day to day. But for the time frame you're going to be there, which is the very end of August and early September, before Labor Day, you can expect summer crowds to still be pretty heavy. It's still going to be hot for sure. It's still going to be rainy occasionally, maybe daily, possibly. It's still hurricane season, though you likely don't have to worry about hurricanes. That's certainly a possibility. But some kids will have already started going back to school by the time you get here, which is good. The crowds will lessen just a little bit, but it won't really, you won't feel the effects of that until later in September. So at that point, it'll still be hot. It'll still be crowded, unfortunately. And now we have a voice message that I think actually came in a couple of weeks ago. Unfortunately, I didn't get to it till right now, but it is John. So here he is.
Hey, Ricky. This is John from Orlando. Hey, recently we went to the Art of Animation Resort, and back in the day when the Pop Century first opened, I remember they were going to do the earlier decades of the 20th century, and there were actually some buildings built there on that site, and I was just wondering if the Art of Animation buildings are those buildings, or did they completely demolish those buildings before they built the Art of Animation? Not sure if you know, but maybe the listeners do, so thanks for the info. Bye.
John, thanks very much for that call. They are indeed those very same buildings. Those buildings were going to be the earlier decades of the century, that is, Pop Century. Of course, now it's only Pop Half Century. It was going to be the 1900s, 10s, 20s, etc., leading up to the decades that are covered in what is Pop Century. So, and of course, there was that bridge that connects the two. It still exists. It was called the Generation Gap. Now it doesn't really have a name because now it's the bridge that connects Pop Century to Disney's Art of Animation. So yes, indeed, they are the same buildings that were partially constructed years ago. And while we're turning it over to people other than myself, let's go over to Jason, who recently attended a grad night at Disneyland. Grad night wrapped up recently. Of course, it's taking a step back here. Grad night is no longer an option out here at Walt Disney World, but it has been at Disneyland for even longer than it ever was at Walt Disney World. Still exists there, but this is the last year it's actually going to be at Disneyland Park. It's moving to Disney California Adventure next year. I talked a little bit about grad night recently here on the show, mentioning that I thought it was quite invasive for crowds not expecting it, for, sitting in New Orleans Square, eating a meal, and all of a sudden dance music, very similar to what you're hearing in the background now, all of a sudden started playing, and I shared a little bit of audio from that. Anyway, that's my perspective as an outsider to grad night. Of course, I went to grad night out here in Florida years and years ago, but here is a little bit from Jason, who did indeed attend a grad night this year at Disneyland, kind of an inside look at the event.
Hi, Ricky. This is Jason from Thousand Oaks, California. On Thursday, May 31st, I went to Disneyland with my high school senior class for grad night, and I'd like to share some thoughts about my time in the parks. Now, grad night was different this year than in years past, and I think it is far better than what I've heard in previous reviews of the party. Because we were allowed to arrive earlier, we were able to have the great experience that you expect going to the parks. We were mixed with day guests as we went on attractions, enjoyed the atmosphere of the park, and took advantage of Fast Pass. Now, the benefit of the grad night Fast Pass over regular Fast Pass was we could actually get 2 Fast Passes at once. Normally, you'd have to either wait 2 hours or until your first Fast Pass becomes valid to get a second. But in this case, we got a Fast Pass at 4:15, and it said another Fast Pass will be available after 4:10. That was really great because we were able to get on a lot more attractions with shorter waits, even though crowds weren't heavy anyway. Because we were mixed with day guests, it was also a bit confusing as cast members tried to separate day guests from grad night guests who had the green wristbands on and were allowed to stay during the private party. But after about a half hour, the day guests cleared, and all was fine. You mentioned in a previous show that when you were visiting as a day guest to Disneyland, you were thrown out of the moment from loud music in the Rivers of America. Well, we were able to avoid that by hanging out in Fantasyland, which was very quiet once the party started. So you could have a normal day at the parks experience, even with the loud blasting music in other parts. Overall, I really enjoyed my time at grad night, and though it is sad to see it leave Disneyland Park after nearly 50 years there, it's a great event, and it was very well run. Thank you for the show, and have a great day.
Thanks very much for your thoughts. Glad to hear that you had a good time, and I'm sure everybody who attended on the student side of grad night had a wonderful time as well, as it has for as many have for so many years now. I certainly had a great time years and years ago, and I'm sure I was one of the obnoxious teenagers back then that I was talking about a few weeks ago when I experienced it from this side of things. So, so good to hear the other side of things. It'll be interesting to see what it's like at Disney California Adventure next year. I think Cars Land, specifically Radiator Springs Racers, and having World of Color will definitely work out very well. And you know what? We will wrap it up there. I have many more emails to share, but in an effort to bring down the total time of this week's show and shows moving forward, we'll call it right there as the end of your listener feedback for this week.
Tomorrow.
And that is where we will also wrap up show 379 of Inside the Magic, concluding our look at the new Disney California Adventure. Of course, it's just beginning, essentially. I mean, it's only been, about 3 weeks since it all reopened there. Cars Land, Buena Vista Street, and yes, even the Mad Tea Party when it made its official debut. It's a wonderful park. Over the last 5 years, World of Color, The Little Mermaid, now everything else that's new, and throughout the whole Disneyland Disneyland Resort. It really has never been a better time to certainly visit that park, but all over. It's just a great time to visit that resort out in California. In fact, I'm immediately looking forward to going back. However, my next California trip will not be to the Disneyland Resort. Instead, it's actually to San Diego to check out everything that is San Diego Comic-Con. And what's most important about that in respect to this show is that next week, next Sunday, will not be a show because I will be in the midst of the final day of Comic-Con. So next week's show is either going to be on Monday or on Tuesday. Most likely Tuesday, because Monday is probably going to be sort of summarizing thoughts and figuring out what I am going to be talking about through it all. So definitely follow along on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and over on InsideTheMagic.net to check out everything from the San Diego Comic-Con, Disney, and beyond. It's going to be a great time as it was last year. This will be my second time going. We had so much fun going last year that just couldn't resist going again this year. And with Disney returning and no D23 Expo this year, should be a great time. So I'll bring it all the fun back to you in photos and videos and reports and interviews and all that good stuff. I do want to thank Magical Travel for sponsoring this week's episode of Inside the Magic. You can find out more about their services by visiting magicaltravel.com. And of course, visit us over at lanyardlab.com to see all the different styles and custom lanyard options that we have available. You can request a price quote today to receive a free digital preview of your lanyard design. So there it is, show 379. It'll be a little over a week till I talk to you again, but you can always visit our website in the meantime. And until then, thanks to all of you for listening and for watching each and every week. And have a magical week. Goodbye.
Beautiful tomorrow, just a dream away.